Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am an English teacher and also a language anxiety coach. And this means that I have an interest in helping people speak and use English with more confidence. So today in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about our amazing brains and why keeping your brain calm when you are speaking or learning or performing in English is so important. So, our brain is incredible. The human brain is a really miraculous thing, and it's capable of beautiful works of art and creating music and learning multiple languages and doing advanced mathematics. And it really is wonderful. But some functions in the brain are a little bit out of date. And it's a bit like when you have a computer and you update the software and then you kind of leave one program and you have the kind of 2006 version, it just doesn't work quite as well as the 2024 version. So our brains are a bit like this. We've got new programs, but we've also got old and out of date programs. And unfortunately, these out of date programs are not very helpful for us. Now, when we are in a situation that we see as threatening, our brain responds with the very well known fight or flight response. And this was really, really useful 100,000 years ago when we were living in a very dangerous world where we were surrounded by dangerous animals and, we could be killed by a tiger or a woolly mammoth. The fight or flight response was really helpful because it gave us the energy to run away or it gave us the ability to kind of just freeze and wait things out. Now, the problem is that piece of our software in our brain has not quite caught up with the fact that for most of us living alive today, we are in a fairly safe environment as compared to the past. So if I go to work, I am not very likely to meet a woolly mammoth that wants to kill me with its tusk. However, my brain doesn't know this. So if I'm in a situation that I believe to be threatening, my brain will respond as though I was around a woolly mammoth. And to give you an example, I was at a networking event on Tuesday this week and I had to stand up and introduce myself. And although I had practice and I felt very confident, suddenly I was aware that I was breathing quite shallow and I couldn't really speak properly. And that was my fight or flight response. That was the adrenaline in my body responding to a perceived threat. So, a perceived threat is a situation that we feel could be dangerous or scary or threatening. And those perceived threats, they do vary from one person to another. So, I may have felt a little bit nervous in this networking event, but perhaps the person next to me has been going for a long time and they are not at all bothered by needing to stand up and introduce themselves. So these perceived threats are very individual and there is no right and there is no wrong. So I guess learning a language, it's harmless. Nothing terrible will happen to anybody from learning a language or speaking a foreign language. So why would our brain process speaking a foreign language as a threat? Because all we're doing is doing what we do in our first language, but in a different language. So first of all, there's a few different reasons why our brain might find speaking a foreign language threatening. One example is when the foreign language needs us to do something that is very, very different from what we do in our first language. Our first language is hugely caught up with who we are and what we are and our culture and our beliefs and our thinking. So if our foreign language asks us to change something, that can feel quite threatening. And a good example of this is, I believe I'm right in saying this, I had some Turkish male students that I worked with a very long time ago. They were lovely. Um, but Turkish has got quite flat intonation. And of course, in English, if you speak with very flat intonation, you sound very bored. So I was trying to help them sound a little bit more interesting in English by having, a lovely rising, falling intonation. And they said, well, this is not comfortable because in Turkish, if we spoke like this, we would sound like women. And we're men. Men. We don't want to sound like women when we speak. So that's an example of their foreign language, in their case, English, really affecting the way that they felt. And I can totally see that that would feel like a threat to your sense of identity and who you are. Now, another way that learning a foreign language can feel threatening, of course, is when we need to perform in it. So I'm thinking about things like lovely IELTS exams, Cambridge exams, job interviews, giving presentations, meetings at work that you have to do in English. All of these things are performance situations which, for your brain, could quite likely be interpreted as a threat because it's scary. Everybody gets a little bit apprehensive during an interview, it's normal. But when you are interviewing in a language which is not your own, in a culture which is not your own, of course, the kind of fear factor is multiplied. And the third reason that I'm going to talk about today that would make language learning threatening is what happens within the learning environment. So, what's the teacher like? Are they kind? Are they respectful? Do they give you time to think? Are they positive? Do they help you when you make a mistake? Or are they strict? Are they angry? Are they punitive? Do they shout at you? Do they shout at the other people in the class? So you think, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to make a mistake with this guy around. So the learning environment where you are is really important for your brain state, because if you have a teacher or a classmate who makes you feel anxious, it's going to be very hard to kind of maintain the calmness you need to learn. So these perceived threats, and what happens when we are feeling threatened? So basically, our body goes, there's a threat. I need to prepare to run away or fight it. And your body starts to release hormones that give you sensations like shaking hands or cold hands, a very dry mouth. Some people sweat. Some people get shaking feelings in their stomach. Some people feel sick. Some people can't breathe properly because can't breathe deeply when we're feeling anxious. And all of these physical sensations are part of our body's fight or flight response to a threat. Now, this would be bad enough. But also, what happens is that when we are experiencing anxiety or stress or fear, um, we basically can't think well. So, if you've ever been in a situation like an interview or an exam and you've been asked a question and you start talking and then you think, I can't remember the question, that's because your brain is unable to be as focused as usual due to the emotions that you are feeling. So these perceived threats, they affect your brain and they give you all these unpleasant feelings, but they also lower your ability to focus and concentrate. And if you think what you have to do to either learn or speak well, of course, not being able to concentrate is not particularly helpful for you. So, what this means is that when you are learning or when you are in a performance situation, you need your brain to be as calm and relaxed as possible. Now, obviously, if you're taking IELTS, your brain is not probably going to feel like what it feels like when you're at home playing computer games. Of course not. And your body will probably still give you some of those sensations of heightened awareness, but that's okay. It's okay to have a certain amount of emotional intensity around an exam, but what you don't want is for your mind to start running faster and faster and faster, and for the physiological sensations to get worse and worse and worse until you can't breathe and you can't think and you can't get your words out of your mouth because you are so anxious. Okay. So I'm going to share now 3 tips that have worked well for me in the past, as well as clients that I have supported to overcome their feelings of anxiety and to maintain that lovely quiet brain while studying and performing. So the most important one, in my opinion, is learning how to breathe healthily. Now, if you are watching this video, you are alive and therefore you are obviously breathing. However, there is a big, big difference between the kind of breathing most of us do most of the day, the kind of breathing that we do when we are nice and relaxed, and the kind of breathing we might do when we are feeling apprehensive, scared, or under threat. And as I have said in this video, when we feel threatened, most of us tend to breathe to our chest, often quite fast. And as soon as we start to do that, we lose our ability to control our speech. And of course, when you're speaking a language, you need to be able to control your speech. So breathing, if only one thing you take from this video, it's work on how to breathe in a more healthy way. I had a client recently who was taking IELTS and who needed a band 7. She had the language, she had the ability, she had everything she needed for a band 7, but she was so scared in the exam that her speaking just collapsed and she couldn't get a band 7. We spent a very short amount of time working on her breathing. I sent her some information, and as far as I know, this was hugely helpful to her in taking the IELTS exam. The really great thing about breathing is that you can do it anywhere and nobody will know. So if you're in an exam, it's very easy to find the time to just take a couple of deep breaths. If you're in a classroom, you can breathe pretty much all the way through the class. So to breathe in a more healthy way, you don't want the breath to stop at your chest. You need it to go all the way down to your belly, if that's possible for you. And you need to breathe slowly in and then breathe slowly out. But see if you can make your out breath just a little bit longer than your in breath. And by just practicing this over a period of time, you can really start to lower your stress level. Now, if you are actually working for an exam, presentation, or interview, I would even go so far as to say you can plan when you are going to breathe. So I've talked about IELTS a lot for some reason. Let's just stick with IELTS. When the examiner is asking you a question, obviously you need to concentrate, but you can also think about your breathing. Before you start to answer a question, don't just go blah, blah, blah. Breathe in. Well, I think that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and it just buys you a second to calm down. When you have your solo card, your solo task, or any solo speaking task, in between each of the points on the card. Stop. Take a breath and then continue. And if you think, oh, well, I haven't got time for that, and the examiner will mark me down for speaking too slowly, and I have to just speak really, really fast all the way through the exam, let me tell you that speaking fast is not on the marking criteria for IELTS, and you have got time to stop and breathe. So for me, learning how to breathe healthily, by far the best way to manage anxiety and nerves. Now, I talked a little bit about classrooms that are intimidating and scary, and teachers that maybe are a little bit intimidating. If you have a teacher who is unpleasant, unhelpful, frightening, and makes you feel bad, just don't have any more lessons with them, if at all possible, because that kind of teaching really has not got a place in today's world. So if you are, as I assume you are, an adult learner and you are working with a teacher who is not helping you, you need to stop having lessons with them if you can and find someone else. Some teachers might have very good hearts and they might really want the best for their students. And because they want the best, they give lots of homework and they give lots of information and they give lots of ideas and they just give, because that's what they think they need to do. But for you as the student, it's kind of like, my gosh, whoa, this is too much. So if you have a teacher like that, maybe tell them, just say, hey, look, this is a little bit too much for me. I can't really cope with all of this. Could you just maybe give me less? And if you have a teacher with a good heart, they should listen to that and respect that. So asking for what you need from your teacher is really important. And definitely don't work with bad teachers. Sadly, there are quite a lot of them. Just you deserve a good teacher. And the final thing I would say is I absolutely believe that all of us can learn to speak a foreign language to a very high level. I don't necessarily mean that you will sound like a native speaker, but I do believe that we can, if we work consistently over a long period of time, we are all able to learn a foreign language. What sometimes happens is that people have very unrealistic expectations of how long this might take. And again, I'm going to reference back to IELTS because it is a particular problem with this exam. And I meet many, 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 many people at about band 5. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to take IELTS next month and I need a band 7. And I think, oh, okay, how do I help this person? Because what this person basically is saying is, I'm going to go from B1 to C1 in a month, and I'm going to do a really difficult exam that even native speakers can't do well, and I'm just going to do that once and it'll be fine. So absolutely have a big goal, absolutely be ambitious for yourself, but there needs to be an understanding that learning a language, it's a long, long, long process, and it takes time and it takes practice and it takes a lot of failure as well to eventually be proficient in a foreign language. So those are my 3 tips. If you are extremely anxious, if you have a situation around you that causes you fear and anxiety, number 1, learn to breathe. Number 2, get rid of bad teachers because you don't need to waste your time. And number 3, by all means, set yourself huge goals, but remember that you need to break that down and be realistic about what you can achieve in the time frame that you have. There is a blog post which is connected to this video. The link for the blog post is below. If you have any comments or questions, or you would like to dispute something that I have said, please do leave me a comment below. I'm always very happy to get back in touch, and I hope this was a useful video for you.